And welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. And EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is the website. Their number, 407-648-1881. Scott and Tammy are both here. I'm Ryan Holmes. And good morning to you, Scott.
Good morning.
And
Good morning. Good morning.
How's it going? We got to come up with a cool nickname for Tammy. Like I got to be like we had one. Mm-hmm. Not the best one at the moment.
But it turned on us quickly.
Yeah.
That went south.
Yeah, so you could say that name crashed, and it's no, I just like the idea of it. It's like Scott Brown and Tammy the Financial Destroyer or something. But he's so calm.
But I don't know. Do we want to use financial destroyer? I just feel like that'll turn people off a little bit.
I've seen too many wrestling promos.
Yeah.
Is really what it is.
You could see him coming off the top rope, though, couldn't you? With a chair in hand. Yes,
I totally could. For those of you that are just listening, for a mental picture Tammy. He's 6'7", super.
6'8",
yeah, so I'm sorry, 6'8", super muscular and Hulk Hogan style hair.
That's Tammy. That's Tammy.
100%.
He hits you upside the head with a chair if you don't like his standard deviation comments.
Watch out for that.
Exactly. But what he does do off the top rope is the numbers. And we still don't have the song for that, but we got the numbers with Tammy right now.
We need to get the lyrics for that, too.
Yes.
With the tone. Yeah, so numbers. Now, we can kick off with the inflation numbers. Everybody's talking about those.
Is that a thing? Inflation?
Apparently it
is. That right?
Yeah.
I had not heard.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a new word coming out. It is circling around. It is stagflation.
Stagflation.
Yeah.
Does that involve like an elk or
Some
deer?
kind of
That's
6-point buck.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
Stag, get it?
Yeah.
Where I'm going. Oh,
Yeah.
God
Or
awful dad
is it inflation when you go to a party by yourself?
Oh, hey now. This
There
is
you
just
go.
getting worse. You better move on.
So inflation, we'll talk about stagflation in a minute. But inflation, first we look at the gasoline prices. They are 18% month to month above, and they are 48% year over year. There's a 1.2% increase in consumer price index, and that's mainly the inflation index we look into. Year over year is 8.5. That's the number we see all over the news right now.
Mm-hmm.
Food prices up 1%. I know, scary stuff. However, something to keep an eye on. The financial market participant took some encouragement from the downside surprise in the core CPI. Now, CPI is, again, we have the main one and they have the other one that excludes food and fuel, et cetera, et cetera.
Which really irritates people when you say that. It's like, because we don't need food or
No,
fuel. Apparently that's unimportant. It does
at all.
It does kind of piss people off, and I kind of get that one. That usually I'm like, oh no, you're being silly. No, that one's kind of annoying. Why would you take that out?
Is it a political trick of some kind?
Who knows? Depending on who's in office, they'll say the other side did it.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But mostly those two items, they fluctuate a lot. That's why they put the CPI number, make a core one without them and one with them. Mainly economically, the reason. Now, this will drive, let's say, the Fed to intervene more aggressively and increase rates higher. Again, that's most likely what's happening right now. On the mortgage side, that's an important bit.
Yeah,
Everybody's
you were.
concerned
What
about
were you
it.
saying to me? Well, when we were talking earlier, you said something about his back in 2008 when everything went to hell in a handbasket. There was a lot more variable rate mortgages out there, so that they were getting adjusted up on people, which was causing them to not to be able to afford the houses they could afford a year ago. Is that in the system now?
Of course it is, yeah. Adjustable rates where your mortgage rate changes based on different factors, including inflation.
But it's not nearly as many as was back then. Is that
Not
fair?
at all. Yeah, it is absolutely fair. Now, it is almost 1% of the total mortgage loans we have in the market.
So it's not. What was it back? Do you know what it was?
40 to 50%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that explains a lot.
But people know this going in, right? Because I'm asking for a friend. Like, you definitely know ahead of time if you have one of these.
You should.
Yeah.
It's in that mountain of paperwork they give you that nobody reads.
Did
but-
not read a single document of that giant paperwork. Just a lot of signing.
Right, because if you don't read it, they won't give you a house. So you just kind of have to sign and move on.
Yes.
Which I think is the strategy there. Well, that's fascinating information. Let's talk about sectors for a second, because people are like, well, okay, well, what's doing well, what's not doing well. What sector would you say is performing the best right now? And I know it's going to be obvious, but let's have it anyway.
You said it, obvious. Energy,
Yeah.
4.5 on month to date. And then you got consumer staples.
What is a consumer staple?
That's what you cannot stop using.
Yeah.
Meaning your toothbrush, your toothpaste.
Mm-hmm.
The
I haven't used one of those in years, so I
Yeah,
don't know what you're
I know
talking
a
about.
couple of people. And
Good thing we're sitting across the table.
Yeah. So utilities is one that I noticed was on your list. So is it historically accurate to say that in times of turbulence, in times of upheaval, like we're apparently going through now, utilities tends to be a more stable asset class at those times? Is that fair?
That is fair. It is a defensive sector.
Yeah.
It pays usually good dividends.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have high standard deviation, as you mentioned. So it does not fluctuate a lot.
Yep.
Steady because you got more people using more utilities. We have population growth.
Yep.
And prices increase adjusted to inflation right now.
Yeah.
All the time. So that's a good.
So in a storm, if you will, that's a good place to have some assets if you think the market's going to get saucy or stay saucy.
Defensive.
So where's the damage being done then? If those sectors are all doing well, where are we getting beat up?
Well, that goes back to what we talked about last week when we said sectors that move very rapidly, they have a lot of volatility. They will get you a lot of gain when the market is up, but also will get a lot of loss when the market is down. And that's information technology.
Communication, technology, the sexy stuff.
The cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the Kathy
The big
Wood
techs.
portfolios. The Teslas and the Rivians and the Rokus and things like that people like to talk about, especially when the market's moving up. But when the market's moving down, you kind of got to get out of the way.
Yeah. There's a lot of intangible asset there. So that's mainly what I point.
Now, this might be a dumb question, but is that just because people are now spending more money on food and fuel, and they're like, I can't buy an iPhone right now, and then so it just goes down when this happens?
I think that's a fair way to look at it. If the cost of the things that sustain you, sustenance, if you will, food, shelter, and things of that nature, continually rising, then the amount of discretionary income you have to spend on discretionary, although I think a lot of young people would argue that an iPhone is a necessity, but we could certainly have that argument at another time. But yeah, discretionary spending obviously drops because, and that's part of the intention, right? With the Fed is to bring pricing down, to slow inflation, to slow the increase in prices, which is what inflation is to take some of that air or the oxygen out of the room when it comes to discretionary spending. So yeah, that's not only a byproduct; it's the intended byproduct.
Interesting. So it's just this, I just only recently learned that with mortgage rates, I have a super low mortgage rate, but house prices were crazy high. And now the mortgage rates have gone up, and that's supposed to drop the prices of houses?
For sure. When you think about how people buy houses, they don't really think about the price or the debt. They think about what?
The monthly payment?
The payment.
Yeah.
Right? So if you could buy a $400,000 house 2 months ago and your payment was going to be $1,600, now that same $400,000 house is $2,000 a month. That might give you pause before you buy that house, right? Because again, when you're young especially, you're only concerned about the payment. You know, when you go buy a car, what's the payment? When you go buy a house, what's the payment, right? So I remember I bought a couch once when I was 20. I bought a couch on
a payment
payments.
for that?
It only took me 5 years to pay off that couch. I think the couch fell apart and was out in the garbage before I got it paid for, but all I cared about was what's the payment because I need a couch, right? That's one of those things that's not just a byproduct, but it's the intended byproduct.
So it's all just it's a constant balancing act of the government and the interest rates to just try to find. So is there such thing as too low for an interest rate? Like if mortgage rates drop down, that would be bad because then houses are suddenly $600,000 for a $200,000 house. And so you're just always trying to find that middle.
Yeah, that's the government's role, and I'm going to get a lot of negative and positive feedback with what I'm about to say. We have to tread lightly here. People are going to scream at me at Thanksgiving. But it's the government's role, in my opinion, to nudge. You nudge one way or the other. People think big government and people think small government. But the truth of the matter is we have to be governed somehow, some way. And we have this system of capitalism, so to speak, sort of, kind of. and the Fed plays a role. And you may not like the Fed. You may say the Fed was some awful creation and it's nefarious and all these things. That's great. You can think those things, but somebody's got to drive, right? So nudging rates up and down is one of the mechanisms they have to do that.
Nudging, very important. I think of it like driving a boat, like where you make very subtle movements and the boat goes. And if you're trying to park a boat, like I did maybe last weekend, and you nudged it just a little too far and suddenly you've hit the dock, quote unquote, and now you owe more money on the boat. That's the government. That's my announcement.
Are you saying the government nudged us into the dock? Or
I'm
what?
saying that it's government's fault that I now owe this boat company an extra $800.
That's where you're going. I got it.
Nudging is important. But again, if you want to talk more with Scott, that number 407-648-1881. That's Scott Brown with Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is the website, and we'll be right back with more It's Only Money. Welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is the website, and that number is 407-648-1881. And we are already into the second segment on a Sunday, Scott. I'm checking over my meme stocks while you're here. Not so good.
Shocking.
Apparently inflation.
AMC hasn't doubled?
AMC has not doubled. The theaters are open, but unfortunately, like the movie, like the Batman, they just released it on the streaming service, in like 45 days after it comes out in the theater. I think I've made a huge mistake, and social media has been lying to me, Scott.
I can't even imagine you're influenced by. I mean, nobody gets influenced by social media, do they?
Who's
Is that? Like who would,
I don't even know a single person
that would influence.
Never.
That is doing quote unquote, and I'm holding up my hands in large air quotes. They're doing their research.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they say the words. I'm doing the research.
They is a big problem. Whoever they are, they're obnoxious those days.
I need to have a word with them.
Yeah, somebody needs to talk to them. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me. There's been studies done. I was reading in one study, actually this morning I was reading a book called Noise, which was by, I'm going to think of the Daniel Kahneman, who's a famous economist and done a ton of studies that have been quoted over the last 20 or 30 years as groundbreaking, really. And one of the studies they did was using politics and music, and politics is the easier example, where they would show somebody a position, if you will. If you were a Democrat, they would show you a political position, a statement, like we believe this. If they just saw the statement on their own, like they were shown that independent of any other information, and they said, do you think this statement is right or wrong, they would answer one way or another, right or wrong. But if they showed them the statement or showed them the position, and then they showed how many other Democrats believe this was a good position to have, they were 90% more likely to say it was a good position to take. 90. Wow. The truth of the matter is, and that was true of Republicans as well, they did a similar thing with music, where if you heard a piece of music, the answers would be kind of in a range of whether it was good music or bad music. The song was good, the song was bad, or the song was just okay. But if they gave you backup information and played the song for you and said 9 out of 10 people think this is the best song on the record, so to speak, then you are again considerably 2/3 more likely to say that was a good song than he would have been, or that person would have been, independent of that information. So the point being is we are easily influenced. And that can happen with money too, right? With NFTs. What were you just telling me that Jack Dorsey sold his Twitter first tweet?
The first tweet, a picture of a
tweet.
Yes.
Literally a picture of a tweet for
$2.9 million.
Oh, I don't think it doesn't say anything prolific. I believe it just says I'm setting up my Twitter account.
Yeah, he just says I have a really nice beard or something to that effect, because he does. He has a very nice beard. And then I guess it went to the secondary market in the last few days.
Yeah, that was last year when they sold it for 2.8.
Yeah.
And a couple of days ago, they put an app for bid.
Yeah.
And
nothing.
They were hoping to get $48 million.
Yeah.
But they got
crickets.
Get like $300.
Yeah, they got crickets. So I mean, and I don't know that speaks to what, the group dynamic, although I think it does to some. In Jack Dorsey's defense, I think he donated that money to charity, but the reality is that the group, if you're in a group, you're sitting, as a young person, you're sitting in your local pub with your friends, and they're all talking NFT or crypto or whatever they're talking, and there's 10 of you, and 9 of them are carrying on about how it's going to change the world and it's the greatest thing ever. And again, for the people that this irritates, the crypto mob, I'm not saying it's not. I don't know what it's going to be, but you're certainly not you're not inclined to speak up and say, guys, I really just don't know about this thing. I just don't understand it. I'm not sure it's going to work, or if it does work, I don't think we know. You're not doing that. Most people, let's be honest, most people in that situation are not going to speak up. So the group dynamic plays a big role, in your household. If you grew up in a house where your parents believed a certain thing about politics or money or whatever it was, I said in my book, what's the title of it, Ryan?
I've never made anybody rich.
Yeah, we still haven't changed that.
Darn it.
But I said in my book, most people, in my experience, acquire their core beliefs, what they think about politics or money or relationships or emotions or whatever social dynamic. They acquire their beliefs about those things by the time they're 20, 21, 22, maybe college influences that a little bit. And then they spend the rest of their lives trying to reinforce what they already believe, right? So they spend, by 22, 25, you have this core set of beliefs, and then people spend, I know this to be true because I'm surrounded by people, and people will go out of their way to find information to support whatever it is they already believe. And that's true of money. You learn money habits from your parents or the people you're around, and if you grew up in a spendthrift household where no money was saved, oftentimes you're going to go that way. Now, I will say, to be fair, some people, and I've witnessed this as well, watch their parents do completely stupid things with money, and they do learn from it. But that's the minority. They go the other way. I grew up in a house that was, so-so, middle of the road, sometimes good, sometimes not so good with money. I went completely to the right, very conservative with money, fiscally responsible, entrepreneur, yada, yada, yada. I don't know that it would have affected me either way because I'm just a weirdo and that's the way I was going to be no matter what. But I don't know, Ryan, what were your experiences?
Well, I'll say this. My fiance grew up watching her mom go severely into debt. And she made it a point in her life to just always stay away from that, always have good credit and keep going. So she's done very well. I've had the experience of growing up really poor, like single mom, watching her work restaurant jobs, and then later on her building a business, and then having money in my later teen years. And the difference in that just showed me, for lack of a better term, just how much better it is to have money and to be financial. And I never wanting to go back to, eating spaghetti out of a can for dinner. Because,
that's good stuff, man. SpaghettiOs, come on.
Yeah, but when you're like, we can't use the microwave this month, so just eat it cold. That stuff sticks with me in my head. So
yeah, and people will, people who, it's idealistic to say money can't buy you happiness, right? And
I would like to have enough money to at least try.
Yeah, so I'm willing to give it a shot, right? So what I would say to that is what I do say to that is I say, look, money is never going to bring you life's most fulfilling moments, your children, accomplishment. Money's not going to do that. Money's also not going to protect you from life's worst moments, which is someone dying or being gravely ill or the kind of things that are going on in Eastern Europe.
Steve Jobs is dead.
Steve Jobs is still dead.
Yes.
But it makes the time in between a hell of a lot more fun, right? So it's not going to bring you – people say, there's been plenty of studies done. No, I'm doing it. People say. I'm that guy now.
No, you're the they.
I'm
You're
they. Please stop me from doing that. But they say that once you reach a certain level of sustenance, you don't get any happier. And I think we've all seen that because Tammy and I are in the money business. We meet all kinds of people with lots of – typically they have money, right? Because otherwise they typically aren't coming to us, right? And I can tell you that there's no common denominator. Some of them are unhappy people. Some of them are really happy people, even at the same levels of wealth. So once you reach sustenance with food and shelter and you can kind of care for yourself and your healthcare needs are somewhat met, and I know around the world this study says that number is around $70,000 a year, then you don't get any happier by having more money. Now, for me as an entrepreneur, I'm a builder, I'm a grower. I'm interested. You are too in your own little business, Ryan. With your business that you're running, your kettle corn business, right? You're a grower. That's your mindset. Some people have these fixed mindsets where they're not that interested in growth. They're more interested in, being comfortable in the situation, which I think is great. It's great to be. My uncle, who's one of my favorite people in the world, says it's good to be content. I think that's a wonderful thing. That's not my lot in life. I'm constantly looking for opportunity and how do I hire more people? How do we do this? How do we do that? How can we make this neater, better, cooler, faster? But on average, money is not the end-all, be-all. But like you said, we're all willing to give it a try.
Yes, I don't like being content. It's as weird as that is. It's not a driver to move forward. Like if you just I'm sure it's great to just sit there and be happy. I'll never be that guy to do that because not that I'm unhappy. I'm just always looking for more and to like better things. Like I look at something and I go, here's how we can change this 3 ways to just make it more efficient. So it's interesting, but yeah, from having no money to having money now, the mental real estate that I have for other things, because I remember being a kid and just like, I got to think about where to get food now instead of like thinking about doing my homework. It frees up that level.
For sure.
And with my career, my business, they do pretty well. So I'm not constantly thinking like, are they going to fail? What do I do if they do? It's just like, okay, how do we move to the next step? And that's powerful as a human being.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of American capitalism, at least as it was designed, where we have a growth mindset as a country.
Well, if you would like to have an even bigger growth mindset, Scott Brown with Edgewater Family Wealth is the guy you want to talk to. And by going to edgewaterfamilywealth.com, or you can call him up. You can go old school style and use the old phone. And that's 407-648-1881. We'll be right back with more It's Only Money. Welcome back to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown. Tammy is here as well. They're with Edgewater Family Wealth and edgewaterfamilywealth.com. That number again, 407-648-1881. And just before we went to break, we were talking about family situations. And you are a financial advisor. Do your kids look up to you for financial advice? Do they see you as like a financial kind of like role model?
Obviously, I'd like to think they do. I think like any kids of any person, like I would imagine if you're the president of the United States, your kids are like, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's, when they're like teenagers, like who's listening to this guy? Well, everybody. And this guy knows nothing. But as they get older, and my kids are 19 and 27, I think my son is now got finally an understanding of what it is I do. He's in our business now, and I think he has a better appreciation for, mainly my experience. I've been doing it for so long. I think he gets that I'm a guy he can go to about money or business or entrepreneurship or whatever it is. My daughter's 19. I think she has a somewhat of an understanding of what I do and how I do it and my acumen in terms of financial planning and savings accounts and things that are checking accounts and credit cards. She'll ask me those questions, but I think she's still a little skeptical. It'll take her, how kids are, somewhere around, for my son, he was probably 23 or 24 before he thought I wasn't a complete idiot. And my daughter is, she's getting there. She's not convinced yet, but she's working on it.
You got to keep selling the sizzle.
That's right. So, yeah, isn't it funny that people that you pay their bills, they think you're an idiot? That's an interesting dynamic. But, it's interesting, this kind of hero thing we have going in professions, and everybody kind of has their heroes, whether they're political or cultural or whatever, music icons, whatever they are. But, in our business, one of the things I've noticed over the years is a lot of, not a lot, but some financial advisors for sure, when they go into a conversation with a client, they're trying to be the hero. They want to be, they open their shirt, go into the phone booth and come out and everything's wonderful. I don't know that that's the right approach. I think if your financial advisor is saying, I'm the hero and I'm here to save the day and I can fix everything and make everything better, and it's because of me that you're able to succeed, I think that's wrong. I know it's wrong. It's not because of me that my clients are successful. Hopefully I add to the equation. Hopefully I'm part of the team. But the hero, Ryan, in the equation is the client. The client is the hero. If a person builds a business. Let's say they're in the kettle corn business, for example.
Good business.
Big kettle corn empire, as we like to say around here. And they spend 25, 30, 40 years building a business. They've got employees, they've got distribution, they've got inventory, they've got headaches, they've got debt, they've got to deal with the bank, they've got to deal with this and that, and recession and depression and inflation and stagflation and all of the things that go with being a business person or an entrepreneur. And they get through all that, and then they come to a financial advisor with what they've accumulated by going through all of that. The advisor is not the hero. The advisor was sitting in his or her office waiting for you to show up drinking some coffee. That does not make them a hero. You are the hero. The client should always be the hero in every equation because the client does the hard part. The client has to save. The client has to be responsible. The client has to be disciplined. The client has to not buy the new car every 2 or 3 years or not get the new iPhone every year. That's the hard part. We all know from an emotional standpoint, it's hard to save. We're not wired for it. As you and I have talked about many times, Ryan, if you didn't eat the food 300 years ago, the food went bad.
Yeah.
So we didn't save it. We ate it, right? If you didn't do the thing wouldn't get done. So there's no need to save. There's no need for patience or discipline or process. So we're not really wired for the heroic actions that entrepreneurs and good savers. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could just be a person who works really hard, has spent 30, 40 years. I have probably a dozen, maybe 2 dozen clients who are former employees of phone companies. They refer to themselves as pole climbers. I don't even think that's a thing anymore. I don't even know if they probably go up in a bucket or something now. But they literally had to climb up telephone poles, with those steel things strapped to their ankles, and they climb up and fix whatever needed fixing. And they were very bright people, very smart people, but they certainly weren't, they weren't physicians, the people that went to school for 20 years. They were smart people, and they did what needed doing. They're heroes. I mean, they never, most of them probably never made more than $50,000 a year in their careers. And I can tell you, I retired a dozen of them with 7, 8, 9, $1 million or more in liquid assets because they did the hard part. They saved. They didn't always buy the new thing. They didn't get a new house every 5 years. They didn't wear fashion designer clothing. And because of that, because of those heroic disciplines, if you will, they got to where they were going. My job is to make sure it doesn't get messed up between the time they retire and the time they pass away.
Well, life creep is a new phenomenon for me, right? Like, because I make more, and me and my fiance both make more than we've ever made in our life, right? It's not a lot, it's not a ton, it's just more. We're not, we're not struggling every day. It's good. But life creep and that money creep is a thing. So we have fallen a bit into the trap of, well, we make more money, so whatever this thing is, like, we can afford that. We got the money, and the next thing you know, our bills are almost exactly the same ratio as where it was when I was, working as a waiter.
Yeah.
And so, what would be your advice on either mitigating it, if not avoiding it?
Well, I don't know that you can totally avoid it. I mean, we don't, you have to live for today too, right? I mean, there's if you're sacrificing, we do planning, Tammy and I do planning, and we give a percentage of success to a client. So, if you're 38, you're going to save $500 a month, you've got $30,000 in the bank, you're going to retire in 40 years and this, that, or the other, then you have an 80% chance of success. And whenever I show a client an 80% or an 85% chance of success, they're always like, well, why don't we want 100%? I said, well, you don't want 100% because, you want to live today too, right? And we're not saying be paupers, turn off the cable, and eat cold SpaghettiOs every night, right?
Yep. Bad financial planning.
That's might be good financial planning, but it's no fun, right? So it's like a diet. If you say, I'm not eating anything, I'm drinking water for 3 days, yeah, that's not going to hold up,
not
right?
Healthy, yeah.
So again, how do you mitigate that, to use your term, is there's great ways to do that. You save a percentage of your income, right? Like 401k is a great example of that, right? If you have a 401k and you say, I'm going to put $100 a month away, and that was when you were making $30,000. And then now you're making $50,000, you're still putting $100 a month away, right? But if you say, I'm going to put 5% in, now you went from $1,500 to $2,500 because you're saving 5% of $30,000 and $50,000. So and I know that sounds so simple to people. They're like, well, duh, right? But you listen out there, you're not doing it. I can tell you're not doing it. I talk to people every day. So if you say I'm going to save a percentage of my income, that's one way to mitigate. If you build out a goal for I want to accumulate this much and you work backwards and say it's some nominal rate of return because we can't guarantee you high rates of return, whether that's 3 or 5 or whatever number you pick, and you say I'm going to save to get to this value. This is the money I need to have in a bucket, and I'm going to check it every 6 months to make sure I'm on pace. If I'm behind, I'll add a little more. If I'm on schedule, then I'll just stay the course, right? These are simple. As I've said before on the show, most people spend 2 weeks planning a vacation every single year. Where am I going? What am I going to do? What am I going to eat? Where are we going to shop? Those kind of things. People spend weeks on that planning. They spend literally no time on the planning that involves a third of their life, which is retirement. So, and it might not even just, we talk about retirement a lot on this show, but the reality is you could be saving for a house. You could be saving for a kid's education. You could be saving to take a sabbatical. Maybe you want to take a year off. I have an attorney that I know very well. 10, 15 years ago, I think it's been now, he had a goal. I'm going to save $200,000, which an attorney can do, and I'm going to take a year off. And he did. That was one of his goals. He just packed up and said, I'll see you guys in a year. So it doesn't matter what your goal is, how you mitigate that life creep, as you called it, which I think is a very appropriate way to phrase it, is you have disciplines already in place. You don't do the discipline after the fact, right? People say, well, I'll fix it later. Well, name one thing you can say that about, like the idiot light goes off on your car. I'll fix it later. That never works out well, right? So again, it's the same old boring sob story from Scott. Be disciplined, have a process, be responsible. That's the hard part.
I just imagine you coming out on a stage like Tony Robbins style, high energy, just everybody out. All right. What are we going to do? We're going to save. That's right. You got to be disciplined.
And then they all walk out.
Yeah,
just a third walk out in the first minute. By the end of the thing, it's just me and my mom.
Yeah.
And even she's annoyed.
It's hard to make that, exciting and sexy, but it just seems to be the answer. Would you say, though, as a quick tip before we go to break, it just make it automatic, so you're not even thinking, so in your paycheck or whatever, you just set like, all right, this money goes to 401k. I don't have access to it. The money I do have access to is this, and that's the way to go.
Momentum's a hell of a thing. They've done tons of studies on 401ks, and it's an easy example is people, if you have to opt into a 401k, you're far less to participate than if you have to opt out. And we can talk about that when we come back.
All right, you're listening to It's Only Money with financial advisor Scott Brown with Edgewater Family Wealth. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Only Money with Tammy and Scott Brown, financial advisor for Edgewater Family Wealth. EdgewaterFamilyWealth.com is the website. The phone number 407-648-1881. And it has been a beautiful morning, Scott. And something you said during one of the last segments, it got to me because you said I have a kettle corn empire, and that's how I present it to people. Mm-hmm. I don't say because if I just say I have a stand at a kettle corn market, I view it as I'm an entrepreneur, Scott.
You are.
I'm a businessman. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I have one thing? Sure. And do a lot of my bill paying? Yes, it does. But I want to be an entrepreneur. The problem is, don't really know what to do next. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's the plight of an entrepreneur, right? I think people, it's funny that people say, well, they think of entrepreneurs like an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs or somebody. And that's true, they are, and they're the pinnacle, or in Steve Jobs' case, we're at the pinnacle of what they do. But entrepreneurs are necessary, I think, in our society, certainly in a capitalistic society, because they create jobs, they create opportunity, but they crash and burn a lot too. So people sometimes will get bent out of shape about the amount of money folks make, and I'm not going to dispute, whether somebody should make $1 billion a year or not. But the truth of the matter is, and I've said this before, without disproportionate reward, people are not going to take disproportionate risk. So you're taking a risk, right? You have to buy all the supplies, you have to have the machine, you have to spend your time, which is an entrepreneur's most valuable resource, to go do what you do. There's a chance nobody will come or nobody will eat your kettle corn, right? That's a possibility.
That's the fever dream about once a week.
Yeah, right. You wake up in a cold sweat. more kettle corn, more kettle corn. But that is the plight of an entrepreneur. And people, I think, again, we get all worked up about these big companies, whether it's Microsoft or Exxon or Coke or whoever it is. But the truth of the matter is, over half of us work for small companies. Small companies are defined by the Small Business Administration as people who employ 500 employees or less. That's most of our economy. Most of our jobs.
500's the small business?
Yeah. And
I'm a
that's,
micro business.
my team is a little less than 50. We have a little less than 50 at our firm. So we're a small business as well. And there are entrepreneurs everywhere. People, you just don't think about them that way. You're an insurance person. You drive by these insurance agents. Those are entrepreneurs. Your lawyers have their own firms. They're entrepreneurs. Doctors who start their own practices, although that's getting harder for them, they're entrepreneurs. So some doctors are doctors, some lawyers are lawyers, some financial advisors are financial advisors. They're not all entrepreneurs, but some of them are because they've started their own. My firm, I worked for a big firm for many, many years, and one day I said, I don't want to work for this big firm anymore. I want to do it my way, right? And there was a mechanism for me to do that, but it was a big risk because at the big firm I worked at, they paid all the bills. The phone bill was paid. The water showed up. There was always coffee in the coffee maker. The reception person was always there. I didn't worry about that stuff. I just worried about dealing with my clients and their needs and providing them value. But one day I said, you know what? I don't like spending so much money on a thing I don't think's valuable to my clients. There's a service that this big firm offers. I know they're taking money from me to do that. I don't even use it. I don't like it. I want to have my own office. I want it to look the way I want it to look. I want it to feel the way I want it to feel. And I want to hire the people that I want to hire. I didn't have that option as an employee, so I took a risk by venturing out into the entrepreneurial world, as you do every weekend or every week when you go out and hire people to deal with kettle corn and buy the supplies and do all the things.
Yeah, I always thought because as a more creative person, right? Like I do comedy and a bunch of other stuff. I always thought business people were not creative. I was their mind must always think in maths essentially. But what then I learned though is their creativity is the creation of the business and the doing that kind of work in and of itself is making something out of nothing essentially. And it's just instead of them, making a masterpiece of painting, they're here's this building that I am responsible for.
I have a great analogy for you, a story on that. So as you know, my son was a musician when he was younger, and they were in a band that had some modest successes. And one day I reached out to the drummer, who's a very talented songwriter, musician. I adore him, but I kind of got on him about something, and he pushed back and said, well, I don't like the way we're doing this business part of the band. And I said, I will not tell you how to write a song because that is not my art. Business is my art. I will expect the same from you. And he never did it again, by the way. But the point is, your point is well taken. Your point is that the business is an art. There is no do this, then do that, and that equals big bags of money. Because 77% of all small businesses fail. Most of them fail in the first year, and most of them fail with their own money or their family's money. Imagine how hard that could be on somebody. I can remember when I started my own business, when I ventured out, there were many days where I questioned my sanity. What am I doing? These families are dependent upon me. These people that work for me, if I mess up, they're messed up. They won't be able to pay their bills. I won't be able to pay my bills, and that's awfully intimidating. So before we get too judgy, which we sometimes do about folks who have reached some pinnacle of success, you probably need to know that they weren't an overnight success, even though that's how you know them. It probably took 10 years for them to be an overnight success to get where they were going. I can tell you, I talked to tons of founders, people who started their own business and are now close to retirement. And the first thing I ask them is, tell me your story, because I know there is one. If they either were a bellhop or they bagged groceries like I did, or they worked at night. When I started in the business, I call these I walked uphill in the snow both ways stories that I tell my kids because they start rolling their eyes and trying to leave the room. But, when I started in the business, I wasn't making any money. You know what I did? I unloaded trucks at night and then put on my tie and started cold calling for customers. And it was an ugly, awful, terrible experience. but it made me who I am, and it makes me very much appreciate other founders and entrepreneurs who get where they are going.
Now, I imagine the person listening to this is sitting there going, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have $100,000 to invest in something right now, let alone the idea or opportunity. Where would someone even begin at a regular level?
Well, again, I don't think entrepreneurs, and I'm going to temper this, but on average, I don't think entrepreneurs are made. I think they're born. I think you're just born that way. You have a growth mindset. You have an appetite for risk. It doesn't trouble you that, you may have to max out your credit card to pay your staff 1 week, right? Most people that would make their heads explode. So I think they're kind of born. They can be made. I've had a few people come into my world that I've helped get better at it, but I've not made them me. I've not made them like my partner. I've not made them like other entrepreneurs you know about. They're better at working for someone and being more entrepreneurial minded, but they are not entrepreneurs. So you kind of got to be born with it, I think.
Well, let me ask you, according to the internet, a sort of controversial question then.
Ruh-roh.
Multi-level marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Are those people entrepreneurs?
Well, I mean, to be fair, they are. They're annoying entrepreneurs, but they are entrepreneurs. And if they're successful, they're Rich DeVos. I mean, the guy's a multi-millionaire, right? The family is extremely wealthy because he was really good at being annoying. To be fair, they are entrepreneurs. Most of them fail. As you know, it's somebody way up on the pyramid that makes all the money, and a couple of folks will do it for a few years and quit and move on. But yeah, it's fair to say that that's entrepreneurship.
So what about an investorpreneur? Wow, my mouth just totally broke.
Investorpreneur.
Investorpreneur.
Because I made the word up, so it really is the fact that you can't pronounce it makes sense because I can't pronounce it half the time. But the truth is, and that's where we're going here is if you're a person who has a portfolio of stocks and bonds, in a way your portfolio is your entrepreneurial experience, right? You have to think, I'm taking risk here. I'm giving, even if you're doing it with me or my team, you're still taking some risk. You're still saying, I want to buy Microsoft, and I want to buy Apple, and I want to buy Exxon, and I want to buy Coke, and I want to buy this bond that pays 3%, and yada, yada, yada. I'm going to put this portfolio together, and I hope that it works out. But there's a risk, quote unquote, that it won't. So in your own way, the term I have coined that you couldn't say is investorpreneur, right? Investorpreneur is
investorpreneur. I got it.
Investorpreneur. Everybody say it with me. Investorpreneur is a thing. Thank you, Tammy. Is a thing, a word that I made up for people to kind of logically get their head around what they're doing. They are running a business. Their business is a group of securities, stocks, bonds, whatever. Yes, they have a teammate in me to do it with them. In my case, anyway. But that is one way I think you should look at managing your portfolio.
So essentially, you're an entrepreneur, and the business is yourself.
Yeah, I think that's true of everybody. And if you view your life that way, and you view your economics that way, and your finances that way, I think you will come out farther ahead.
Well, if you would like to become an investorpreneur,
hey.
And first of all, practice it before you call this number.
It's hard to say.
But you can work with Tammy and Scott Brown. They're with Edgewater Family Wealth. That website again, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. The phone number 407-648-1881. It's been another great Sunday, fellas, and I hope we'll see each other again soon.
You got it. Yeah, and clearly people are rich, right? Or wealthy. You don't have to be rich. I like the term wealthy better. I mean, to rich reminds me of like the Monopoly guy or something. But, they're people. They're regular people.
Now that guy I trust.
See, the problem, Scott, you don't have a monocle.
Monocle is, now, if you can meet a guy with a monocle, I mean, like, I'm all in.
What was his financial advice? He said buy Park Place?
Where is that?
Where is that? I can't find it.
Tune in to It's Only Money with Scott Brown from Edgewater Family Wealth, Sunday mornings at 7 on Real Radio 104.1. Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Edgewater Family Wealth is not a broker-dealer, is independent of RJFS.